Chinese property crisis will probably not be resolved anytime soon after their latest research. Get this, they found at least 48 million unfinished homes have already been sold.
China's real estate market is shaking up markets around the world. For this to get better, smart changes need to be made and other countries need to work together. Investors and politicians need to understand what caused this real estate disaster and what it might mean for the future as the world's second-largest economy tries to get back on its feet. In China, home prices dropped again in June. This shows how hard it is for leaders to stop the property market drop that hurts investors and the economy as a whole. The National Bureau of Statistics says that prices for new homes in 70 places, not including government-backed housing, fell by 0.67% from May to June. This was the second drop in a month, after a 0.71% drop in May that was the biggest since October 2014. The prices of existing homes also dropped, but only by 0.85% compared to the 1% drop the month before. The most recent numbers show that China's real estate market hasn't been helped much by the rescue plan that was put in place in May. The Chinese Communist Party's important 5-year meeting starts on Monday, but there isn't much hope that big, brave steps will be taken. Prices are likely to stay low as long as builders and homeowners offer big discounts to get rid of their houses. People might not invest in real estate because they are afraid of catching a falling knife, wrote Christy Hung and Monica Tsai in a recent note for Bloomberg Intelligence. They said that the fact that there are too many new and old homes on the market is making prices drop even more. The price drops are even bigger now than they were last year. The Statistics Office says that the average price of a new home dropped 4.9%, and the average price of a used home dropped 7.9%. Last quarter, China's economy was still hurt by the real estate market. Economists polled by Bloomberg said the economy would grow 5.1%, but it only grew 4.7% compared to the previous year. Also, real estate investment fell by 10.1% in the first half of the year, which was the same amount of drop seen in the first 5 months, according to new government data released recently. At Moody's Analytics, economist Harry Murphy-Cruz said, "Recent efforts are a step in the right direction, but still fall short of taking on the full scope of the problem. Real estate's influence is widespread, so when the sector struggles, the whole economy feels it." Fortunately, there was some growth in the sales of homes. Bloomberg's estimates, based on data from the first half of the year, show that the year-over-year drop dropped to 13% in June, a big improvement from May, when it dropped 28%. China started a big real estate policy plan in May. Its main goals were to make it easier to get a mortgage and get local governments to buy homes that haven't been sold. Since then, the 4 biggest towns in the country, Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, have taken big steps to make it easier to buy a home. Building homes isn't just an investment in China, it's a big part of the culture. Many people think that having a home is a must for getting married and a sign of wealth and success. This tradition comes from the time when owning land was a sign of power and standing in China. People still really believe that today. People also see home ownership as a safety net because there aren't many rights for renters, and Social Security isn't very strong. There is also a lot of real estate in China, which makes up a big part of the country's GDP. But there are a lot of big problems in the home market right now. First, surveys show that many people who want to buy a home next year are very worried about their work and future earnings, which makes them much less likely to do so. Next, there is more uncertainty because builders are having a hard time finishing projects, which makes many buyers worried. On top of that, China's population is getting older, which means fewer people want to buy houses, which naturally lowers demand. All of these things are coming together to make a perfect storm that has crashed the real estate market that was once growing. Home sales and prices are dropping quickly, which is putting a lot of pressure on the economy as a whole, and making it clear that smart, effective policy changes are needed right away. The real estate problem in China began when Evergrande, which was once the most valuable company in the world, went bankrupt. When it first opened in 1996, Evergrande was aimed at upper-middle-class buyers, but it went too far by borrowing too much money and building too much. The company didn't pay back more than $300 billion in debt by 2021, and its assets weren't enough to cover the debts. When a court ordered it to shut down in January 2024, it showed how bad things had gotten. Another big player, Country Garden, which is China's biggest real estate company, also ran into trouble when it owed a huge $205 billion. The company is now going through a liquidation study because it is having money problems. Not only have these crashes shook the local market, but they have also made people nervous about other big companies, like Vanke, whose credit rating dropped to junk status. The fall of these real estate giants has shocked the industry and shown that China's housing market has bigger problems than people thought. China's real estate problem could slow down trade between countries and have an effect on commodity markets around the world. China will need to make smart changes and work closely with other countries to keep its economy and the world on track for growth. This will help to stabilize the sector and lower global risks. Why is Xi not fixing China's economy? The Chinese economy is having a hard time and isn't doing as well as promised. The government had hoped for a bigger and longer recovery after the pandemic, but it didn't happen. China's official growth rate for 2023 was 5.2%, but some experts think it was much lower, between 1% and 2%. Even though there were some signs of change at the beginning of 2024, the economy still seems to be barely getting by, with exports being the main thing that keeps things going. People inside and outside of China are losing faith in the country's future because of this slowdown. The numbers make it clear. Consumers and makers lost faith in the market after the Shanghai lockdown in the spring of 2022. When China got rid of its zero-COVID policies in late 2022, there was a short glimmer of hope. But since then, hope has stayed at record-low levels. Even though business has picked up a bit lately, it's still a long way below its peak. It's possible that these numbers don't show how worried Chinese people really are about where their country is going. This was made clear to me during a long study trip this spring, where people were very worried about both the present and the future. Everyone is worried about the economy, which is having a hard time because of the fall of the real estate market. Some people were very blunt about other problems they had too, like the zero-COVID policy and how it ended in a mess, the crackdown on private tech companies, the push for ideological purity, the unrealistic goals of technology self-sufficiency, and the rising tensions with the West. People aren't spending much, businesses aren't investing much, and some people are even trying to move their money and families abroad. People kept asking why the leaders haven't done more to get the economy going again and boost trust. When people talked about leadership, they mostly seemed to mean Xi Jinping. Many Chinese people, and people around the world, see Xi as fully in charge, now that there are no term limits, and the government is tightly controlled by Communist Party organs under his direction. He is also constantly seen in state media. Beijing hasn't been idle. It's increased credit, come up with plans to ensure the private sector and foreign investors, made it easier for people to buy second homes, and lowered the intensity of its wolf warrior diplomacy. But the reaction from the people I talked to, which isn't a scientific sample, has not been very positive. For many, these steps are too little, too late. People often give 4 reasons why Xi Jinping and other top leaders haven't done something different to solve China's issues. These are called the 4 no's in traditional Chinese political style. He doesn't know is the first. Some people think that Xi might not fully understand how bad the economy is because officials are scared to tell him bad news for fear of being blamed. Instead, they may be giving him reports that are too good and have been cleaned up. I even heard that lower-level officials at Zhongnan High, which is the home of China's government, have told academics to only write reports that are positive. Others say that the top officials who decide what news Xi gets are in league with the security and propaganda departments, which changes the news he gets. But not all people agree with this. Some people say that Xi and other leaders are well informed. One expert said that when they gave research to the party, they were told to give honest, unedited analysis because the leadership wants a variety of points of view. He doesn't know what to do is the second reason. In this case, Xi and his team are well aware of the problems, but they are too big and complicated to handle. They are dealing with a lot of problems at once, such as the real estate crash, rising local government debt, a falling birth rate, rising inequality, unrest in Hong Kong, and rising tensions with the West and nearby countries. Any one of these problems is hard to solve, but it's even harder to solve them all at once. One more reason is that China's leadership is now made up of people some people call the B team, with many officials who have never worked in the central government before. In the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, decisions are now made in fewer places. This hasn't made it easier to work together across the system or between Beijing and local governments, though. Several sources said that the leadership has had long debates on a number of issues, which has slowed down decision-making and pushed back the start of new policies. For example, they knew the stock market was having trouble by the summer of 2023, but new rules didn't come out until early 2024, after China's top securities official was replaced. The real problem is how to fix one problem without making other problems worse, or how to make a plan that covers everything and finds a middle ground. The best example is the housing market crash. The different goals of all the important players are very clear. This includes the national and local governments, developers, homeowners, banks, and other parts of the economy. This issue came up again when the third plenum, which was supposed to happen in January 2024, but had to be pushed back to the summer because of differences among the leaders. According to some sources, the quality of top officials has gone down. For example, Premier Li Qiang is seen as less successful than Li Keqiang, who died suddenly last fall. In the same way, Liu He, who was vice president and in charge of the economy before He Lifeng, is seen as more capable. He doesn't care is the third idea. This idea says that Xi is more interested in keeping his political power and strengthening the CCP's control than in economic problems. Reports from the media often show him going to factories and talking about economic issues. However, his daily tasks may include more managing security and political issues, such as making decisions about staff, than working on economic policies. People I talked to didn't agree with this idea as much, but those who did were very passionate about it. They think that Xi is ready to give up economic security for nationalism and CCP power. They also believe that Xi was chosen to take over as Hu Jintao's replacement in order to avoid what happened to Mikhail Gorbachev and not to boost economic growth quickly. People who believe this are usually older, over 60, and often see similarities between Xi and Mao Zedong. They say that both leaders were focused on ideological purity and class battle, which has caused a lot of social and elite tension. He doesn't agree is the last idea. This idea says the issue isn't Xi's lack of knowledge, uncertainty, incompetence, or lack of interest. Instead, it's because he and his closest advisors really think that the way things are now is the best way to handle the problems China is facing. They might believe that since China's access to Western markets, technology, and money is getting worse, It needs to focus on making its own technologies and taking charge of global supply lines. People who agree with this point of view say that there is proof that their plan is working. China has become a world leader in electric cars and batteries, built the longest high-speed rail network, made the C919 single-aisle commercial jet, made famous internet platforms, and set up the Beidou satellite system, among other things. A lot of the people I talked to agreed with this theory. They think that Xi really believes that controlling new technologies is very important for China's economic growth and national safety. They think that investing less in real estate and more in advanced manufacturing and new technologies is part of a clear and strong plan. People who know these people see a focused and determined approach where others see stupidity or lack of interest. There are two different groups of people who support the "he doesn't agree" idea. Most people who agree with this idea think that China's leaders have made a big strategic mistake by being too statist. They say that putting too much emphasis on strict industrial policies and controlling new technologies, while ignoring consumer spending and moving away from liberalization, will cause less productivity, more debt, slower growth, and more problems with other advanced countries. There are also people who agree with the leadership and think that critics are just conservative extremists who don't want the government to be involved. They think that the criticisms don't take into account important technology advances and don't give enough credit to the progress that is being made. It's interesting that some of these supporters work for study groups that are connected to the government. It is very important to understand these points of view. If the first two ideas, "he doesn't know" or "he doesn't know what to do," are true, then the problems we're facing might be caused by mistakes that weren't meant to happen. So, giving them better knowledge and better ways to solve the problem might help them change their approach. This point of view also changes how China should deal with other problems in the world. For example, some people in Washington think it's important for President Joe Biden to talk to Xi Jinping face-to-face to make sure he fully knows how the U.S. feels about things like Ukraine and Taiwan. As long as Xi and the other top leaders don't care about the economy or don't agree with the criticisms, things will likely stay the same. New information or policy ideas may not have a big effect. There are two main ways that things might change. The first is if there is a big economic crisis that makes the government take action. This could cause the leaders to realize they were wrong and change how they do things. A new group of elites to rise up and replace the current leaders, or, least likely, protests by the people calling for a new leadership. Even though there might be more going on below the surface, none of these things are likely to happen soon or in the near future. A big change in the international situation is the second option. If the U.S. and other Western countries gave strong promises to be reliable sources of technology, markets, and money, fully acknowledged the legitimacy of China's authoritarian government, and agreed with China's claims over the South China Sea and Taiwan, things might get better. But this kind of change is even less likely to happen than changes that happen in one's own country. Foreign business leaders and officials, both inside and outside of China, tend to think the "he doesn't agree" theory, which is one reason why the West probably won't change its mind. From their point of view, Xi seems to be in complete charge and is sticking to his current plan, only making small changes to please critics at home and abroad. Because of this, they feel like they need to be even more strong and determined in their beliefs. This isn't a scientific poll, but it shows that there is a growing gap between Chinese people and their leaders, as well as between Beijing and other world cities. This means that big new steps probably won't be taken. Instead, the differences in how the government is acting and how people in different countries see things are more likely to cause more tensions and conflicts.